Good afternoon or good morning for some of you. Thank you all for being here with us on this special occasion. This is our fourth and last event for Artists in Conversation, a series of online webinars, lecture performances, and live streaming events that have constituted the online component of our exhibition, Life Beyond Boundaries, the Geography of Belonging, which is ongoing at JWD Art Space in Bangkok. My name is Loredana Pazzini. I'm the curator of the exhibition, and I will be the host for today's event. First of all, I would like to acknowledge JWD support for making this project possible. It's an incredible support that we have received both for the exhibition and for this online program. Despite the many challenges that we have been facing and we are facing ongoing due to the pandemic. We opened the exhibition on June 1st, and we managed actually to stay open for the month of June and part of July. Then the premises had to close due to a very severe third wave, and they're now opened again. The exhibition will be on through September 30th, so we hope you will be able to visit us. During the lockdown period, however, to overcome the physical distance that separated us from our audience, we devised this online program, which is titled Artists in Conversation, which aims of bringing our speakers, feature and guest artists, as well as curators and scholars, closer to our audience to discuss some of the concerns that are at the core of the exhibition, such as how to define or to think about national identity, national belonging, national imagining from an artistic and cultural perspective. I'm very happy and very pleased to say that the events have received a warm welcome and support from our audience. It was at the beginning a bit of an experiment for us. We are all adapting and using this Zoom webinar and digital platforms. So we've learned on the ground, and it's very rewarding for us to have received good support from our audience. And on this note, in fact, I would like to remind that all our online events are recorded and that the recordings are uploaded on the JWD website. So this is a screenshot of the page. If you go on the JWD website and you click on the news section, you will find the Artists in Conversation page. And there you will find all the recordings of all the talks that we've been doing. Also, if you go on the same website, JWD website, on the blog page, you will find very informative artist videos, about 2 minutes artist videos per each artist that they have kindly produced in response to the exhibition, A Life Beyond Boundaries, the Geography of Belonging. And the idea behind creating these two online portals is that to provide a repository for all the artists and all the works featured in the exhibition, as well as all the conversation that have developed around the exhibition, to be used now in the future as an open archive for the research on contemporary art in Southeast Asia. And specifically to today's online event, similarly to the first event that we held at the end of July, today the roundtable will focus on the Benedict Anderson's book, A Life Beyond Boundaries, which is a source of inspiration for this exhibition. However, today, the specific framework or the way we approach the book will be of it as a memoir that outlived the author. Not only the book A Life Beyond Boundaries, Beyond Boundary, a memoir describe Anderson's memories of working in Southeast Asia, but also his incredible, extraordinary life. The book was published, as we also mentioned on the first event. The first edition was in Japanese, actually, and then in English and in Thai and many other languages after he passed away in 2015. So in a way, the book has outlived the author and overcome a sense of belonging. And in a similar manner, today's roundtable discussion will explore key points of the artistic practice of our speakers to observe conceptual boundaries, such as memory, myth, and matter. And on this note, I'm delighted to have scholar and curator Vipash Purichanont moderating this roundtable. And he will be in conversation with artists Citra Sasmita, Haffendi Anuar, Lyno, and Vuth. In terms of the structures for the event today, where I will soon pass it over to Vipash, who will start by sharing with us his framework for this roundtable, before having each artist presenting for about 10 or 15 minutes. So before every presentation by every artist, I will introduce each speaker with their bios. After that, the artists have concluded their presentation. As I said, there will be a conversation with our moderator to highlight some of the key points that have emerged from the talk, from the various talks. Of course, we will be very happy to take questions from the audience. So if you would like to ask more or have comments, please type that on the chat box. And we will be very happy to have you sharing your comments with us. Some housekeeping rules before we start, before I hand it over to Vipash. This talk is recorded, as I mentioned, so you can access it at a later stage if you wish, and it is also live streamed on Facebook. Please, for the audience, keep your mic on silent to minimize digital noise. And lastly, if you are experiencing any technical glitch for the audience, Mary, our JWD host, will be able to assist you. So if you can, again, type in a message on the chat box on this note. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Vipash before handing over to him. He is an independent curator and lecturer at the Department of Art History at Silpakorn University in Bangkok. Purichanont received his doctoral degree in curatorial knowledge from the Department of Visual Cultures, Goldsmiths, University of London. His curatorial projects include Kamin Lerchai Preserved 31st Century Museum of Contemporary Spirits, Chicago 2011. The first Thailand Biennale, Krabi 2018. Concept Context Contestation, which took place in Bangkok, Jakarta, Hanoi, and Yangon between 2013 and 2019. And the Singapore Biennale in 2019. He is currently part of the curatorial team of the Thailand Biennale, which will take place in Korat at the end of this year, 2021. Vipash, please join us.
Thank you, Loredana. Okay, so I'd like to thank also JWD Art Space and all the artists presented here and everyone watching. Thank you for the opportunity to, I guess, also pay homage to such an important person from our fields. But then at the same time, I think when Loredana asked me to moderate a panels for this exhibition, I think I just gonna explain how I came about this concept, how I twist the books around a little bit, and how I ask the artist to approach it this way. So we have been studying and I guess reading Benedict Anderson as a scholar, but then I think it's interesting that, after he passed away, then we have Benedict Anderson as a person, as a memory. So the book was published, I think, for the Japanese version, maybe almost the end of his life. And then for the English and then for the Thai version and the other languages were actually after his life. And then I was found by the concept or the idea that, the book somehow outlived the author. And then as a memory, of course, but then also as a matter. So not only just this book of Benedict Anderson, all the books as a matters, something that becomes matter and then live longer than the person as a materialities. And then also the way in which he work and approach the myths. I think in that case, we see this book not as a memoir or the memories, but then also matter and somehow myths or magic, So in that case, what I asked the artists in the exhibitions to do is also maybe we also approach the way, or we think the way that we as maybe them as an artist to rethink the way that they approach their practice from this standpoint. So from materialities, from the memories, something that outlive, and then from the myths. So I found that is like something that the boundary beyond life kind of came later when I thought about that. So because it's like in this three different category, they somehow outlive or overcome the life of the creator. So we'll just, open up another different way of thinking about times as well. Yeah, so I think that's more like introductions to what we will be speaking today. I think after we have listened to Citra, Haffendi, Soyu, and Lyno's presentation, perhaps we can come back and then have some discussions about what we have listened. So I will just end the introduction here. Thank you so much. I'll get it back to Loredana. Thank you.
Thank you, Vipash. Thank you so much. And we've discussed and we've seen some of the slides. It will be a very interesting roundtable, let's say today. So I will start by introducing the first artist who will be presenting, Citra Sasmita. Is a contemporary artist from Bali whose work focuses on unraveling the myths and misconceptions of Balinese art and culture. She is also deeply invested in questioning the woman's place in social hierarchy and seeks to upend normative constructs of gender. One of a long-term project, which is also featured in our exhibition at JWD, Timur Mera project, on Kamasan canvas, represents a geography of female figures, fires, and various natural elements, composed whimsically in an unfolding on pansexual energy. While rooted in mythological thinking with Hindu and Balinese specific references, the scenes are equally part of a contemporary process of imagining a secular and empowered mythology for post-patriarchal future. Sasmita's recent solo show is Ode to the Sun at Yale Workshop, Gilman Barracks in Singapore in 2020. She has also won the Gold Award winner UOB Painting of the Year in 2017. And some of her group exhibitions include the Biennale Yogyakarta, Indonesia in 2019, Garden of Six Seasons in 2020, Parasite Hong Kong in 2020, and the Kathmandu Triennial in 2021. So I would like to welcome Citra and hand it over to her for her presentation.
Okay, thank you, Loredana and Vipash, for the introduction. I would like to share screen first. Okay, good afternoon from Bali. It's really great to see all of you here. I hope you are enjoying this lovely week so far. And responding of the theme today, I would like to do storytelling about the dark history of Bali. That's something contrary in our people expectations, seeing Bali as harmonious, beautiful, and peaceful tourism place. And here I would like to share you about our what happened in our past life, and then generally I will presenting about Bali in 1930, because in that year Balinese experienced a big or major changes, especially in a political situation. Okay, the first presentation screen. Sorry. Okay. The title here is A Woman in Evil Spirit, something that I choose to respond the theme to portray the general situation of cultural propaganda by the Dutch colonial, that something we inherited and we do today repeatedly through ritual or religious ceremony. And this is the things that shape Balinese identity, especially how we portray women in Balinese patriarchal culture. And here I would like investigate more further by rereading the colonial history in Bali. Next, okay. So this cultural propaganda start after some several tragedy that happened here in around 18th century to 19th century. There's puputan or mass suicide in some area in Bali, like Denpasar, Beleleng, and then Klungkung, Tabanan, where the king stabbed himself, following by another member of royal family and his follower to show their loyalty to the king. And this action also symbol against or a protest against the Dutch colonialism. Then the puputan or the suicide for honor is become kind of moral defeat for the Dutch colonial, and that make the colonial change the strategy of conquer from war into diplomatic way. We call it Balisering. And Balisering in Bali start in 1920. And this is a colonial political strategy in Bali in developing art and culture by sending their agent of change, the artist, the painter, the anthropology, to make Bali authentic in such way, such as we have authentic culture, authentic ritual, or system, social system in branding in international. And then this Bali sharing politic actually a pragmatical way to exploited Bali from the nature to the Balinese people, and make us away from national movement, from the ideology of Indonesian movement. That time there also happened Youth Congress in 1928. So the Bali sharing are keep us away to have the spirit of nationalism. So Balinese only focusing on developing tourists, developing art and their own culture until we doesn't know what is the definition to being a nationalist, nationalist against the Dutch colonial that time. So this is the sketch of the Dutch is in this pavilion at the World Colonial Exhibition in Paris, 1931, where the colonial showing not only the culture, also the Balinese people here as the object of exhibition, and then they take all of our ancient artifact, and then ancient statue and the fabric and also the painting. And the Balinese painter who invited to that exhibition are very proud. And until now, in rereading a history of Bali, we are glorifying this colonial artists, not specifically reading about the Balinese artist itself. All this time we read our history, it's just only glorifying these colonial artists. Next is one of product of Bali sharing. This is the movie. It's an authentic melodrama movie about island in Bali. So the director of this movie is Andres Roosevelt, French-American filmmaker, and Armand Denis, Belgian documentary filmmaker, and it released in 1932 in US. So I will read the synopsis of this movie. This is one of the main character, Princess Made, who will marry Prince Nengah. Guna or Black Magic is a movie of one-sided love of Prince Nengah to a young peasant named Dasni. Prince Nengah is a fresh graduate in Europe, so he have a kind of rebel perspective to his old custom. So he against the old custom to marry to falling in love with low case named Dasni. But Dasni have fiancé and already engaged with a character named Wayan. This is Dasni and her fiancé named Wayan. This is Prince Nengah and Dasni. Okay, and the fate between Prince Nengah and Dasni is not acceptable because the difference of their social status. Because the Prince Nengah will be the next king of Bali, so it will be not suitable marrying low case. Okay, this is the marriage scene of Dasni and Wayan. And Prince Nengah should marry noble lady that already chosen for him, Princess Made. Okay, although Dasni has married Wayan and Prince Nengah also fulfilled his duty as a new king, married Princess Made, the prince still crazy in love with Dasni. Here, I would like to highlight the antagonist take part. She is a prince sister named Rai, initiate to help her miserable brother by meeting sorcerer and order guna-guna or black magic or love potion and bring it to Dasni. So her brother finally can fulfill his desire. This is Rai, the antagonist character. Okay.
The next morning at sunrise.
That's the spoiler of the movie of Guna Guna. You can watch the full movie on YouTube. Okay, through this movie, it is interesting for me to see how Bali in colonial gaze, then how our native culture, our native custom, especially nude Balinese woman, be exploited in a such exotic way. And we also know the fact that the Balinese nude woman become a massive commodity in tourism in 1930 by printing it in the postcard, and then the tourists advertise, so it will be attract European tourists to come to Bali. This movie also portray the complex problem of feudalism in Bali. And here the prince character is kind of a symbol of antithesis of this old custom after his study in Europe. So there is like a changing character after his study in Europe. But here, next, I would like to focusing on supporting character named Rai, the prince sister who help him to get aphrodisiac. Where's the character? To get the aphrodisiac for the prince. She kind of reflecting the binary opposition on this movie between a male character that in the first scene of the movie, the male character portray have an important role, such as in public meeting, in decision making, but woman here associated only in domestic job, in something just stay at home, and then also associated with invincible work, including using evil spirit for impossible purpose, such as to make somebody fall in love. And then this is also the fragment of the movie. It is Calon Narang performance in Bali. Okay, this is the other manifestation of the old literature in Bali. They become not only painting, they also become performances. And in Balinese ritual, Calon Narang performance, when the priest summon evil spirit or witches called Rangde, then in the dance, the masculine energy called Barong defeated the witches. These performances we inherit until now, and we still do it in every Balinese Hinduism ritual. And for me, it become a collective memory, and the character of evil spirit or Rangde is already taken for granted, associated with a vengeful woman. Okay. Okay, about Calonarang. Calonarang is story from 12th century. It is a story about Waido who have black magic and make a terror to all people around the Kediri kingdom. The king that time is Airlangga, named Airlangga. This finding is raise my question because in my interpretation, Calonarang is a powerful intellectual woman who master alchemy, but most of the classical painting and all narrative or all literature, she portray as a monstrous figure. And then another discovery on old manuscript and old painting in Bali. This is painting, anonymous painting that made around 15th century using Kamasan technique. Here, woman also portray as a male gaze or a sexual object here. Okay, this is selling painting in Kertagosa Museum. When I read book Helen Chris, Woman in Kakawin World, it seems validating my discovery that woman only portray as a monstrous figure or sexual object, because even from 14th century, there's no woman writer we can find in old manuscript, and mostly male writer that very close with the royal palace, and what their job is to write about king or a superior interest, such as how the king want to be portrayed in the painting, such as they want to portray as the son of God, and then all the superpower, and then when he conquer another kingdom with his followers, he want to portray as heroism as possible. And in this book, there is no significant writing or significant painting that portray about important role of woman. Okay, next. In 1930, not only old manuscript, the rising of modern literatures marked by the novel Nirawit Seti, The Slave Seller, written by Panji Tisna published in 1935. It's also the main character there also portraying about the evil woman who hunt young lady as a slave to sell. This novel also revealed the Dutch business in the 17th to 19th century. They exported slave around 2,000 people, Balinese people, each year to some places like Batavia, like to South Africa, and then West Indies or island in Pacific Ocean. Balinese woman here, by the historical record, is a favorite slaves and have a high price because their beauty and their capability or knowledge in herbal medicine. So they become a favorite slaves that time. It seems this a very gloomy story. But last presentation, this is good story that happened in 1930. This also the year that some women organization take part in Bali, such as the birth of Putri Bali Sedar organization. The founder is Igusti Ayu Rapet, and her movement with with all the member in Putri Bali Sedar is a fight against inequality of women, especially in accessing education, because they are very adore so much Kartini ideology to that want all the women, no matter their social status, to get the education. So before it, women by tradition should only stay at home and do domestic job. Do domestic job. This is something Gusti Ayurapa criticized, then build the first school for women in Bali. She also support women active in critical writing and support them to publish it in the newspaper or a magazine, so the information or their idea can spread more wider. And then she also urged the member or the woman become a politician. So when they become politician, they can change the regulation that disadvantage women, such as polygamy marriage that generally happen in Bali. In Bali, there have a large number of marriage, a polygamy marriage. So that is also Putri Bali Sedar agenda to fight for. And then to closing the presentation, I would like to read the quote. Art is ritual to expel the evil spirits of inequality of women that we inherit from canonical texts and narrative from the past political agenda and history. Okay, I think that's all my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I will get back to Loredana or Vipash. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Citra. What an incredible archival footage also you showed us. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to introduce the next speaker in alphabetical order, Haffendi Anuar. Haffendi's current work looks at the kain pelikat, a type of colorful plaid tubular transnational male skirt, usually worn domestically and sometimes as an informal labor uniform in parts of Southeast Asia. Oriented by his childhood memories of encountering and even being enveloped in the fabric, his research and exploration into the iconography of the garment encompasses personal family photos, archival photographs, images from social media and the internet, and looks into the fabric's origin, social utilization, visual patterns, and formal structures. From the materials gathered, he would reimagine the fabric as construction material for hammock, cradles, and nets, working in a process that incorporates collage, painting, and sewing. And some of these works are in the exhibition. Recent sole exhibition include Midai Stanza, Richaco Fine Art, Singapore, 2019, Elephant Utopia, Art Taipei, 2015, and several group exhibitions such as The Foot Beneath the Flower at Nanyang Technology University ADM Gallery, Singapore in 2020, For the Few and the Many, BS London, 2019, and Head Hip Heat Institute of Contemporary Arts, Singapore in 2018. So I would like to share, call now Haffendi to share his presentation with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Loredana, for the introduction, and thank you, Citra, for such an illuminating presentation. I'm gonna go a little bit free flow today. I think I usually do presentations that way, and I think I want to start with I think how being part of the exhibition and also reading Benedict Anderson's texts and other similar kind of texts has sort of shaped my way of thinking nowadays, or the way I view my work. I think I truly enjoyed the book, and I think I was reading it as I was making the work, but also I think the process of reading for me, especially now since I moved to London for about a little more than 2 months, I've been reading a lot in trains and buses. I think you always trying to find time to read in between commuting because it takes so long to get from one place to another. And it's weird when I'm reading these texts. I think one of them is Old Kuala Lumpur, like J.M. Gullick. Also Glimpses into Life in the Far East by Thompson. That these are sort of colonial writers or Western writers writing about Southeast Asia or more focused on Malaysia. And you're moving in these vehicles across the city, but you're also moving through this landscape as you read. Like you're sort of going through a landscape of memory, and it sort of ignites, I think, sort of what I feel about my city or my country. And these texts could be really problematic as well. I think, some texts, I think, Glimpses of Life in the Far East I really hated it. I hated the tone. I hate how condescending it is. You kind of feel in a way, oh, this book should be burned, like toppling those statues of Rhodes and, during the height of the BLM movement. But I thought, it's good to keep them and to think about them and read them. And I think, it takes a bit of patience and a bit of sort of trying to understand that perspective. And I learned a lot from sort of reading those texts. And one of the things that I'm concerned with as well is the creation of sort of identity in Malaysia, or Malay people, which I'm part of in Malaysia. And I think, some of the texts would say these notions, and they become sort of concrete in these books. And I think in a way they perpetuate that sort of myths, or that sort of a sense of identity, and it becomes adopted by the people of the certain race or country. But that's another thing. But anyhow, so I think I'll start with just a page from one of the books, and it's just talking about sort of an interior space. And I've always been sort of interested in architecture, either outside, like urban architecture. So my previous work sort of looked at Kuala Lumpur, the city that I was based for a long time before I moved, of its sort of urban fabric, but also the interior spaces, and sort of in and out, like sort of looking from inside, outside, outside, inside. And I think it's really interesting to sort of be able to sort of imagine and think about a space that is very European. So I'm currently based in London, and there's this weird notion, and I'm really sort of involved in the Southeast Asian art scene in terms of like talking, creating conversations, exhibiting, but I'm physically based somewhere else. And that notion of sort of that being here and there, and I'm sort of very interested. So in this page, it talks about a room in Penang, I believe, in this sort of colonial mansion, and it describes of it being quite westernized in its sort of interior, but also very Asian, and it's owned by this sort of wealthy, I think, colonial administrator, and was inviting people for the party. I was just sort of interested of reading that in the UK, about in Penang, but it's also very Western, but also not. It kind of sums of how sort of cluttered the way I think about my work in a way, or myself. This is a map of Kuala Lumpur, an old map actually, and I just want to sort of bring it up because it's from a book, and as I was reading it, I actually learned more about my city, about the street that I grew up, the street that I would, like, my family, I would go to school on, and I never knew this history until it's actually being explained to me by a Western writer. It's in a way quite sad, but and it's sort of also understanding where I come from somewhere else, like sort of far away. So as Loredana mentioned, for the past 2 years, my work have been focused on the Kain Pelikat. I think it stemmed from a memory that my mom told me that I used to like to play under my dad's kain. Kain is the fabric, it's called, when as a child. And I thought about it as like this safe space and this idea of sort of architecture as well, and an architecture of geometry, similar to sort of like the works that I've been doing. But it is also sort of soft, and it's in a way see-through, and speaks a lot about sort of identity and being hidden. And but yeah, no, so I did for 2 years sort of scoured through sort of images, like in the Pitt Rivers Museum, in books, on Instagram, other people's Facebook accounts. I would save their photos. So I do that kind of secretly and sort of compile them into this like informal archive that I keep and I use as references for my work. But they're sort of different, sort of like one of it is a movie, Bujang Laput. It's a really famous Malaysian movie by the genius director P. Ramlee. And I was interested as well in like specific scenes where it's very theatrical, and how the kain would be in sort of these sort of interior spaces, and they become sort of these prompts that I think about my work as well, like how I create my sculptures. There's just a lot of sort of pattern and softness in it. There's the race course in Kuala Lumpur image where, again, it talks about social strata in a city during that time. And that's me and my father, just to show how personal the topic it is to me. So I'm just going to share some works that I've done, and I think we're supposed to sort of discuss what works we want to make in the future. But these are sort of recent work, and I've been thinking a lot about architecture, more so than sort of human architecture. I've been thinking about a lot about animal architecture, like spider webs or anthills, and how like a spider web is both a home for a spider, but also a weapon that catches food. And I'm sort of interested in that sort of duality of how architecture could be more than just a structure, but a weapon in a way, or a form of symbol. But yeah, no, so I've been incorporating a lot of sort of like materials. I'm sorry, the image is pretty blurry, but I use seashells and sort of threads and sand and other things that I incorporate into it. Just things that sort of like ignite a sense of sort of memory of where I come from, of where I've been as a child, like the East Coast of Malaysia, or my family from Port Dickson and stuff like that. There's for the work at in Bangkok. I think I told Loredana I was interested in thinking of in terms of architecture and building. And again, I'm interested in architecture and the body. And I've been using these gutter tubes as like this weighing device, but they're also sort of substitute for the body. Like, the human body is almost like a pipe as well. You eat and then it comes out at the end. But also, these tubes are specifically called, I think, shit tubes. They're like gutter pipes, where in buildings in the UK, it's the toilet, like they carry, down, out. And I use that as a weighing device, but it's as a substitute to the body. And I thought a lot about sort of what the kain means during this time. I think there was an image, I should have included it, in I think the Straits Times of apartment blocks during early stages of COVID, where, the apartment blocks with all these sort of kain hanging out outside of the window, but they're these sort of places where the foreign workers would live, and they were sort of the COVID clusters in Singapore. It talks about like class and, structures and labor and stuff in Southeast Asia, and the kain also signifies that in a way, it more so around sort of migration and economic migration and stuff. But yeah, no, so, and like in terms of web as well, I've been sort of painting these webs onto these archive images that I would print. They kind of look like stained glass, some people would say, but they're actually webs, and in a way, they sort of entangle pieces in the image. So the webs are sort of left out parts of the photos, and I would also leave up some sort of objects or things in it. They kind of become entangled, and it's a way sort of like for me to filter through and see through these sort of spaces and scenes, and in a way sort of history being sort of, cobwebs, it's kind of like has a lot of sort of connotations to like cobwebs in museums, and museums as well have been trying to, especially in the UK, they've been trying to decolonize their collection. I think as a way to sort of step up what they should be doing. But in a way, cobwebs in museums are considered sort of like, these are sort of old spaces that would not come to terms to, but yeah, so some of the works I've been doing just sort of explore the sort of formal investigations of the structure of cradles and hammocks, and there's this sort of baby cradle that you would use to kayak in Southeast Asia, and it would sort of rock up and down. Just sort of my first sort of hammock study while I was studying. I thought about them as sort of beings as well, like they have this sort of like soul in a way. I think initially I was quite like harsh with them, or cut them, and but I think I thought of giving them sort of a way of standing up and treating them as with more sort of dignity. So I made legs for them, and yeah, I kind of felt, and they were like about my height, surprisingly. But yeah, no, it's just sort of thinking of them in a more sort of sensitive way. And these are sort of just archive images that would sort of use them as studies to, these are just sort of other sculptures that I've done in the UK. Again, influenced by sort of vernacular architecture in Malaysia, or traditional architecture. There's the pilotis. But yeah, that's it, I think. I know it's a bit short, but you can ask me questions later. Thank you.
Hi. Shall I start then?
I think Loredana disappeared. So
Yeah.
right.
So sorry about that. Loredana is having a technical internet problem. So maybe
Okay.
Vipash, could you take over for her, and then like we will continue with Soyu. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe I think the best way would be for you to do a short introduction of yourself. I think that's better than me doing without preparations.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
jump
Thank you.
into the presentation, please. I'll take it
Yes.
from here. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I am Soyu. I am from Myanmar. I'm a Myanmar artist. I study ceramics in the US. I graduated from Rwandan School of Design, and a lot of my work is ceramics, but I also do works on paper, and I venture in glass and things like that. So for today's presentation, I wanted to focus on the idea of matter from Vipash suggestions. We can approach this topic as like focusing on these topics, and also think about future projects that we might do. So I sort of, in my presentation, I sort of combine my previous exploration and some new direction that I'm curious about. So yes, let me start on the presentation with screen share. Yes, so yes, this is an image of an installation I did in my solo show last year, before COVID and a military coup happened. Oops. Let me. Okay. So yes, for ceramic, I wanted to focus on the idea of matter because ceramic is a very physical material. It's materially resilient to time. In a lot of prehistoric objects that you find in archaeological sites, ceramic is a time marker. It shows ancient civilization and culture. The material they use at the time, it has association with ritual, burial objects, and also something that you use every day. So in a way, it encapsulates encapsulate time. It's a physical manifestation of the time. And also it shows you what the material culture is like back then. Sort of like a scene in an archaeological sites, in a way, you know, a lot of it is, you see things that they used back then, and also dead body burial sites. So in a way, it also expressed a sense of loss and trauma. Yeah, so for this thought experiment, I was thinking, you know, I'm interested in archaeological imagery also, and ceramic as a material, it's earth, it's clay, it comes from the earth, so it has that kind of natural association with the land as well. So yeah, it's sort of I thought that I would focus on the archaeological inspiration, and to unearth, you know, material and culture of the past, to talk about historical loss and trauma, violence of time, and also the material is also, you know, sort of like an archive and of buried emotion in a way. And ceramic as a material, it's very fragile because it's brittle, but again, it sort of win the test of time because it's so strong and it can last 20,000 years. This is the first ceramics object that has ever been found, one of the many, I guess. It's from 28,000 BCE. It's Paleolithic, and it's from this archaeological sites in the city called Dolny Vestovnice. And it was believed to be a fertility symbol, but I guess the idea of it being fertility symbol or Venus is also debatable, because I saw a lot of, not a lot, but like a couple of our articles saying that these Venuses with exaggerated, you know, breasts and hips and sex organs are actually could be an object of survival, because at the time people are living very difficult lives. There isn't enough food, so people keep this as like a sort of like what do you call that, like a token of luck for them to help remember, help them emotionally to survive through these difficult times. One thing interesting about this this object is also it captures the fingerprint of a child. They don't believe that a child made this, but you know, clay is malleable when it's wet, so in a way it's fascinating that it captures a fingerprint of a child from like 20,000 years ago. It's a very small piece, front and back of the image. I think it's about only 4 inches, and it fits in your hand like, you know, a lucky charm or something like that. So, and these are various prehistoric Venuses figurines that have been found in different era, different time, different places. And this is sort of like an image that I find interesting from early cultures of mainland Southeast Asia. This book, I believe the site is in Thailand, and you can see shards of pottery that's being buried with the dead. So in a way, I feel like the material has this association with death also. You think burial urns, but also pottery, something that feeds us and, you know, live with us when we're living. So so I think materially speaking, the idea sort of connects and is interesting. And it's in this image in the left, this person is being sort of buried inside a huge ceramic jar. And also, I think for this, you know, fictional future project, I would be interested in looking at objects, weapons, from an aesthetic that's from the past, from prehistoric, but also if you look at it in a way, it also feels futuristic. So sort of like merging the timeline and combining something that's inspired from the past, but also thinking about the future, using future technology to make these things could be something that's interesting also. Like, for example, like a 3D printed ceramic thing, you know, as part of the installation, but with like a very primitive firing techniques that I will show later. Another thing that's interesting that I found from this book is also in these archaeological sites, you see the body, you see the bones, and also sometimes it has traces of what the person has eaten when they die. So in a way, it's I think these biological facts is also very interesting. This is a mummy from ancient, I think, South Americans, and this is I think from Egypt, a mummy from Egypt that they did a CT scan. And I find these images very interesting because the visual, the way it looks, it's very now, it's very future, but it's something from the past. So this convergence of like, in terms of timeline, future, and also prehistoric, this merge is very interesting to me in this image. They made a CT scan of the mummy, and then they constructed the bones so they can look through the object without touching it. And I find that really fascinating. So it will be interesting to recreate these images in my own way. And historical period, these are historical periods view earthenware. In Myanmar, a lot of the clay is low fire, so everything you see is like sort of like orange, sometimes high, a little bit of stoneware here and there, but not white clay. So all of these fragments from this early Burmese settlement is interesting in terms of imagery to me too. So it will be, I think it will be interesting for me to sort of remake these things in the way that looks like ancient artifacts, but combine it with maybe imagery from now to record something that's happening now also. And these are some examples of ancient objects, ceramics. This is in Thailand, I think, mother of child. This is from Myanmar. It's glazed terracotta, which is low fire ceramics, earthenware, but painted. But you can see this one is from later on. It's not prehistoric like the previous slides that I show you. The way people see themselves, their self-awareness, their ability to paint, to draw, to depict, to make things have increased. So these are a little more realistic than what we would see as a body. And I think that's shift in perception is interesting also to me. And I wanted to share some grad school explorations that I did in relation to, I guess, materializing this vision or this imaginary project that I will do if I have the facility. I graduated from RISD, and at the ceramic department, at the program there, I had the opportunity to also delve in glass. And this is, let me see if it plays. This is a project, an experiment that I did in a glass class where I cut a braid of my hair and I pour glass into it to sort of encapsulate it as an inclusion. At the time, I was sort of thinking of ways to merge ceramic and glass, and materially ceramic and glass doesn't go because it has different coefficient of expansion. So things that could work as inclusion, put things inside glass, is ash. One of them is ash. So this one, it's sort of interesting to me because it's something that's part of me as a human body, and then it gets entrapped in this glass piece. So yeah, it's a material study specimen, and it's my braid. And in this whole sort of like process aesthetic theme, the idea of ash, the idea of fire, the idea of a loss is sort of the theme here. And this is one of the process that could be used to achieve this vision. This technique is called Verifiering. You basically just put ceramic pieces that you already bisque, fired once, and or bone dry, where there's no moisture, because moisture will make things explode when it will get heat shock and things like that. So you put combustible things like wood chips, sawdust, and fire in a barrel. The thing that comes out of this kind of firing is, since it's low temperature, it's weak. So if I'm gonna do like a installation with things hanging, this process wouldn't work. But it gives a similar aesthetic that I'm looking for, and I've tried it once. So this is the result of the firing, the whole process of making the whole system firing, putting things, burning it, it has that ritualistic feel. And also the result that comes from it also resembles, things you see from a site or an archaeological site. So I think that's why I'm interested in this process for this project. Another project that I did was Sega Firing. Basically Sega, it's a box. It means box. So you're making a box inside the kiln, and this process sort of trapped the pieces inside an enclosed space, not letting the air, smoke escape, and in the process of firing, the ceramic absorb all the smoke. And even when you cut through the ceramics, you see like rings of different gradation of grays and black, and it's beautiful. So I'm interested in this process also, but a lot of facility wouldn't let you do this because it's smelly, because it's smoky, and the kiln will have the ashy look. Also, in this project, I cast my hand, I make it into an arm and sort of fire it in the Sega. In the right, you can see that when I fire it, I made a big box, a ceramic box, and then put chains in and close it and fire it. So yes, this is some pictures when it comes out of the kiln. The process of like taking the ashes away and sort of like looking through what's buried underneath is also really interesting to me. In a way, that's why I'm sort of like interested in the, when the material process sort of rhymes with the concept. And these are some of the parts I was experimenting with the snake image, sort of still playing with imagery. This is some, it looks like real twigs, and the realistic sort of smoky effect it's really nice, I think. So that's why I find this interesting for the process. And in this piece, I sort of try firing glass inside the head of the snake bone. Yeah. And also use it to sort of create a fictional language. And the whole sort of process aesthetic is sort of ghostly. Because I'm using body parts, it's sort of like, some people find it disturbing, but I think if we're speaking about something that's difficult topic, I think it's conducive to the idea. Yeah, so I cast hands, feet of myself, and sort of hang it in parts, to sort of talk about the idea of confinement and body and life and death. This is another sort of reiteration of the pieces. This installation can grow because you can still make new pieces and sort of expand it. So when I get the opportunity, I'll make the parts, but I don't get the opportunity often. So, but yes. This is sort of like a project in the past, but for a future project, I would be interested in sort of adding the sort of like unearthing archaeological feel to the objects, instead of just using bodies and parts and leaves. So I would be also interested in adding some glass component also, to sort of think about the idea of spirits, something from the past. It would be interesting to mix sort of like this monotonous sort of color palette with something that's clear like glass. Yeah. For I think if I were to sort of grow this project and to sort of expand it, I would want to bring in the idea of trauma, present trauma that we're experiencing as a nation because of the military coup. And these are news just from this month, September. A lot of the villages and cities where were invaded by the military. They kill people there, they burn their houses. Recently, I just saw a really disturbing articles of a boy being burned to death alive. And there's images of those bodies floating on the internet. So it's really disturbing to see when the military leaves, they left a trail of dead bodies, and like people couldn't bury them one by one, so they have to burn them mass. And so yeah, a lot of news like this. This one is talking about the news from the past, but also I just wanted to show you the image of the sites, the destruction that they left behind. Yeah, so more images of this national trauma. So yes, to conclude, I would like to sort of add the archaeological component to this concept, because I'm interested in the idea of unearthing something that's been buried and provoked again later on, sort of like past trauma, historical trauma, or loss. Also the idea of sacrifices, in terms of bodies and also in terms of lives, that has to happen because of political instability or things like that. And also another thing I would like to add to it is the idea of regeneration and renewal and birth. So I would probably add images of like nature, something spring-like, something that sort of evoke life to this, these imagery that's related to that. So yes, that's my presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So can you please tell me if you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, because I had a problem with my internet, so now I've changed on my phone, and I hope you can all still see me and hear my voice. Since I missed out on introducing Soyu, I would like to do that now in retrospective and then introduce the next speaker. So Soyu artistic practice explores notion of the self in relation to nature and culture, reflecting on her own multicultural identity as being fluid, fragile, and fragmented. She creates hybridized bodies by referencing the viscera and the botanical in nature's various state of growth, decay, and death. And I think this has been quite clear in your presentation, which was wonderful. So her experience of living cross-culturally has inspired her to reflect upon identity through making, through transfiguration of her emotional landscape by poetically depicting nature and body in parts. She ponders the complexities of individual identity in a globalized society. Soyu has participated in numerous international exhibitions at galleries and museums, as well as receiving numerous awards and honored recognitions. She was named in 2019 Forbes 30 Under 30 Art and Style list. Thank you very much, So, for your presentation. Compelling presentation. And I would like now to move to our next and last speaker for today before we reconvene with Vipash, Vuth Lyno. He is an artist, curator, and educator interested in space, cultural history, and knowledge production. His artworks often engage with micro and overlooked histories, notions of community, placemaking, and production of social relations. He works across various media, including photography, video, sculpture, light, and sound, and often constructs architectural bodies as situations for interaction. Lyno has a passion for introducing human stories and knowledge within this installation by drawing on a wide range of materials, such as original interviews, artifacts, and newly made objects. And I'd just like to remind that at JWD, Lyno is presenting Sala Samnak, a light installation. Lyno is also a member of the Steve Selapa Collective, which he founded and co-runs Sasa Art projects, a long-term initiative committed to the development of contemporary visual arts landscape in Cambodia. His artworks have been presented at major exhibitions in Cambodian international venues, such as the Asia Pacific Triennial of Contemporary Art, the Biennale of Sydney, the Singapore International Festival of Arts, and the Gwangju Biennale. Moreover, his artworks have appeared at institutions such as the Museum of Contemporary Art Taipei, the Gallery of Modern Art in Brisbane, the Metropolitan Museum of Manila, the Art Gallery of New South Wales in Sydney, the National Gallery of Indonesia, the Center for Contemporary Art, Yudzovsky Castle in Warsaw, the Guangdong Times Museum in Guangzhou, and the Chiang Mai City Arts and Culture Center. So I would like to welcome Lyno to please share with us your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loredana, for your very generous introduction. I'll start with this image. If you know, look at this, it's pretty, let's say in a way, it's ordinary image of a family. You know, it's a family portrait gathering together. We see different generations and in a domestic setting. So I want to start with this as a prompt to talk about my early practice, which with photography. Me personally, I don't think I could relate much to the notion of the national imaginary or the national belonging, but instead I'm more interested in the notion of community, you know, a particular kind of community or sub-community, or part of society, in particular those that perhaps under-discussed or perhaps didn't sort of like holistically represented in the public imagination. So this project started in 2013. One of my early projects that I did, and this concerns with the Cambodian LGBT communities. At that time, in around the early 2000s, there was just only an increasing public discussions, you know, on this topic of the Cambodian LGBT, and there's a lot of misconception as well as like misleading information. And actually, this was one person that was a big prompt for me to do this project. Was he said, this was a new sector, you know, for Cambodia. And actually, because this understanding of the LGBT, it was quite, you know, maybe a little bit slow behind, you know, compared to other parts in our region, in a sense of like a public understanding, you know, information available and so on. Anyhow, so this was among the early projects that I did, and I took photographs of some families of the LGBT communities, because I was interested in how they want to represent themselves. So basically, I just requested them to gather around for a family portrait. So I did not organize. So they had to find themselves and organize themselves. That's one photo on the right. And then another photo that I proposed together was to restage one moment in their memory that I think that was important for them. You know, that's so memorable and something that, you know, they treasure. So on that aspect, we sort of like set up together. That was more collaborative, the image on the left. There's a few things that I wanted to explore through this project was how you know, this community, the LGBT community, want to be represented and want to project themselves out to the audience. In this case, what I was interested in through this exercise was to see of something that is not extraordinary, you know, something that's striking, something like different. But I think then I become interested that it shares this, you know, humanity or quality of any other families, you know, regardless whether straight, gay, lesbian, transgender or whatnot. So that's what I thought it's something I wanted to communicate through this work. So again, one sort of family portraiture together, and another one of a reenactment of a moment, you know, in the memory. I also produced a book because I thought the circulation of this image in the contemporary art world was limited. So I created a book that then circulated further through the networks of the LGBT community organizations, so they can share and they can also use these materials to inspire conversations. Next project that I wanted to show you is this one. Cambodia had quite a complex history, and also until not long ago that a new constitution was established. You know, it was not until 1993, after several decades of civil war, genocide, and instability. In 1992 to 93, the United Nations basically a peacekeeping project of the United Nations called UNTAC, UN Transformational Authority in Cambodia, that came to basically take this mission, you know, to basically transform Cambodia into a democratic society through establishing a new constitution, through multi-party election, but also through repatriation of many refugees from the Thai border back into Cambodia. Through this peacekeeping mission, there's a lot of peacekeepers who are national of many countries or many places, including also many countries who themselves have internal conflict, still conflict, that came to be part of this peacekeeping mission in Cambodia. 25 years after I created this project in 2018, and actually I was interested in the legacy, you know, after that particular big historical moment. And largely UNTAC was praised for its you know, one of the largest and also one of the most successful at that time in terms of conducting such a large mission. There were of course there's a lot of criticism towards such an initiative as well, culturally, economically, politically. But one thing that was not so known or what I talked about was these children who were born by these UN peacekeeper and Cambodian wives, Cambodian partners. In this project, I created this a conversation piece where 3 children of the UN peacekeeper who now live in Cambodia, of course, and who did not know their father or lost track of their fathers. They were talking and sharing their stories and conversing their thoughts and ideas about this particular history, about the UN and the UNTAC, and how they find themselves be part of Cambodia today. So there's many things happening, and it was for me it was intended to be a conversation, and I wanted to bring these 3 people together, and I recorded that sort of conversation, so it's unscripted, and in the final work it's a sort of setting that I wanted to create where audience observe that conversation instead of the, you know, one as a very specific object for to be consumed, to be seen, but rather in this case the audience would need to turn around whenever the screen talks. So therefore their agency, that also that the material itself, you know, has not only to the audience itself. My interest is a lot about this notion of community, how one could relate to one another, and formulating in so kind of like a sense of a communal identity. But also I'm interested in space and cultural history, And this one is the Y building, formerly Y building. It was a social housing project built in the 1960s as part of the post-independence rebuilding the nation states, right? And it was quite a very large complex, and it was part of a larger project of public cultural district that includes residential facility as well as the cultural facilities. So me and my collective, we rented a space inside this neighborhood, and we've been running social art projects for 7 years, from 2010 to 2017, exploring different way to create a conversation, with the community and with the sort of like the creative energy there. So what happened in 2017, the development, was approved, and people have to move out with some compensation, and the whole neighborhood was demolished, basically for new development. So through the process, when people were moving out, I noticed that each family, at least has a few spirit houses, the shrines, right? And here the community is quite mixed up, Cambodian with like Chinese descent, with Vietnamese descent, and it's quite a very mixed hub of this culture. So the spiritual practice of shrines also is a mixture as well. There's an animistic, there's a Buddhist, and there's a Vietnamese and Chinese and so on. So many of the houses, they moved out, and they did not bring with them those shrines or spirits houses. So I asked for donations and collected those spirit houses and created into this installation work. And my thought for this was, how can I, continue to allow the story or the lives of this community that continue after the physical structure of this community is dispersed. How can be the spirits, in this case, the spirit, double layer of spirits, of the community can still be alive and continue to witness them and to tell the story from this community. So this is a collective spirit. I would say it's a collective spirit from the Y building community. I also produce into paintings, different images, because I'm interested in exploring different forms and how that narrative or story or life from that material can live in different ways and has its currency differently. So this example of some of the paintings that were also produced. And finally, I want to show this project that that is being presented as part of this exhibition itself, Alive Beyond the Boundaries. I was struck by this the local stories of building a rest hall called Salasamna, which is a tradition really deep-rooted in the Khmer culture, at least dated back to the Angkorian period during the Khmer Empire. But having said so, very similar idea and philosophy is shared in many places. So Salasamna is a rest hall or a rest house that is built by the community. And that means like people come together and they build it, and they do it on the roadside or in like the vacant area in the village. And the purpose of it is to offer it to the basically to anyone, right? To the community, to anonymous people who pass by, want to have a rest, or to basically to society. So it is this idea of a collective building, collective placemaking, and they offer back to the society. And so that's what struck me. And this practice still continue pretty much in the rural area, but not so much in the urban sort of setting. And as well, we see uneven relevance of it, because in some places, this Salasamna was left to decay, and nobody really use it anymore. Of course, they prefer go to a gas stop, a gas station, and a cafe and whatnot, right? So so I was very struck by that. So I created this neon light architectural skeletal structure, and the thing also, because Salasana, the ancient name of it is Agnikru in Sanskrit, which means house of fire. So I wanted to recreate, what is the house of fire in in a contemporary setting. And in this case, I wanted to create an image that is sort of like a little bit imaginary and a little bit of like futuristic. So in a way, it's a little bit like in a dream, but also like, three-dimensional drawing in space that levitates and that is not really has the weight. Yeah, so I was thinking about this a lot, and in the context of the COVID, the notion of the public space, where we can gather, where we cannot, but together with this, the idea of the Salasana, what we as a community can build. So yeah, I wanted to bring this to the consciousness of the audience. I also produce into different painting works as well, to explore the illumination of the material through paintings as well. Yeah, so I want to end my talk here. Maybe to add one thing, because Vipash has also asked, like, okay, also say something about what you want to do, but maybe it hasn't become materialized, or maybe it could be in the future in my dream. So my dream is to actually travel cross country with some people, and then stop by at different Salasana in different places throughout the country. And each stop, perhaps we want to engage in sort of like discussion with some local experts. By experts, I mean like people with knowledge of different discipline, and regardless of that, as a way to create a conversational trips around the country through Salasana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lyno, for your wonderful presentation and delving into your practice. And I would like to thank all the speakers today, and your presentations have been really so wonderful and compelling. And I personally have learned a lot. But I think I would now like to have Vipash sharing his comments and some of perhaps the key points that have emerged from all these presentations, so that he can engage in a conversation with you all. Vipash, would you come back?
Thank you. Yep, I'm
thoughts?
here. Thank you, Loredana. Thank you, Citra, Soyu, and Lyno. I think when I start listen from Citra to Lyno, I have a feeling that I have dig my own grave in a way, and then because I was trying to figure out how to challenge Benedict Anderson, and then he's quite a haunting figure for somebody who works in Southeast Asia, right? So it's like even though we are not bound to his writing, but then at the same time, our discourse somehow constructed, some parted by his research and his insight. So that's being said, I started to make connections between all of the your presentations, and then I think I will raise some observations, maybe some comments, and then we have discussions. Yeah, so the funny things is that I think our presentation somehow still in the scope of what Benedict Anderson has contributed to Southeast Asia. So it's actually make me think about the emerging community. It has only one chapter, not only one chapter. It has one new chapter. It's this chapter came in his second publications. So the second editions, and then it's called Census, Map, and Museum.
Yeah.
And I think we somehow still circle around and trying to find a way to go out of it, but I will try to unpack how I feel about it. So for example, I think one thing that we somehow trying to work on, and then I find Citra and Haff is this idea of the colonial gaze that came out of like your presentations. Of course, the gaze can be like ethnographical gaze, but then with more like exoticizing, right? And then at the same time, it can be like a very colonial gaze on the landscape, very romanticizing, like romanticizing the landscape of the primitive or something like that. So that will be on the presentation of Haff. And then I realized that what contemporary we're trying to do, not only in Southeast Asia, but we saw it in the West as well. So I have been interested in the way that the First Nation in Canada are trying to fight with the colonial legacies, and then they're trying to separate between the demystify and de-exoticize. So somehow they want to keep the myths, but they don't want to keep the exoticizing side of the myths. So somehow trying to work out of it somehow. And then it's kind of remind me of not only the way that Citra trying to kind of work on the myths in a certain way from the gender perspective, but then I also see the way that in Haff work, the idea of the pattern and the architecture. This is to do with also my own research as well. So and that a few years ago I read through like these journals of all these Western persons and the colonial gaze that came to Siam, so came to Thailand. And then you were working on Kayin, right? So in Thailand we call it sarong as well. We call it sarong. And then with the colonial gaze, they're always the same patterns because they don't know how to work on the pattern in the way that the more I guess the knowledge that we has. So that is something I think we kind of need to find a way to work on it. Similar to the once when Citra was saying about like the slave that came out of Bali, which the woman slave that came out of Bali would be expensive if they know the herbal medicines knowledge. I think that's that knowledge that we somehow need to find a way to kind of trace them back. So that is with Soyuz. I always interested in prehistoric and archaeological because it's like the archaeological is like it's the unearthed of what should be on earth or in earth, right? Because it's like for the prehistoric is a burial, it's something that you leave it there, and it should be there. And then the archaeological is like taking out all that have left unearthed, on earth or in earth. Yeah. And then I found prehistoric is something that we should embrace, because I found that we've been bounded by the historical so much. So maybe they have certain kind of possibility to rethink. And as you said, it's like think about the future, because there's no bounds in terms of language or nature, language or nations. But then when Lyno came in with the presentation about memory, I still think that, so I was very interested by your work on the UN and you know, like the history of the UN, and then the new ethnographical landscape of Cambodia. So that's why when I went around and come back to Benedict Anderson census map and museum, because I found that in Lyno work still there's still some rooms, there's still some development from where we left him left us off. For example, like 19th and 20th beginning of 20th centuries, and then we still have that legacy. And then it's become more complex. It become more complex, especially when I see that work of yours. And then, well, it's like such a good end with Salah Somnat, right? It's also something I can resonate with. We also have Salah Thailand, and I'm sure that's something that we share. And then it's a place of the community, it's a place of gatherings that you don't need to be anything. You just, you're just a travelers, and that's somehow maybe how we overcome the boundaries. We just be a travelers. Yeah, so this is more like a comment, I guess. So thank you everyone. Like it make me realize how much we can still adopt Benedict Anderson technologies, like all of this things, the tools that he has, and still work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipash. I agree with all your points. And it seems to me that all the presentation have strong roots in a historical approach to in their works. So from Citra ethnographical gaze to which is in a similar on a similar wave, in a way, still looking at the ethnographical West. So it's perhaps more personal, but still rooted in archaeological past. And then Lyno. So have made a clear reference, I think, to Benedict Anderson's book. Maybe as a way of closing this circle, I would perhaps it would be interesting to see how inspiring has been Benedict Anderson. Like you said, is such an important presence in Southeast Asia as a scholar, as a guide, as a light in a way to inspire us. I don't know if you agree with me, Vipash, to just maybe ask the artists if that is a reference for them. It has been at any point in their life, Benedict Anderson's book, or practice in general. Yes. Maybe Citra and Haffendi already explained a little bit, but if you any of you would like to respond on this note, on Benedict Anderson presence in your practice, is that something that it's an important reference for you?
Okay, Loredana. Maybe special for Life Beyond Boundaries. I didn't read it yet because I don't have the translation copy in Indonesia. But for Imagine Community, I have get some point to reading the nationality in Indonesia, because Indonesia as a country, how they can put together as one spirit of nationalism in the various ethnicity, and then language very different in Indonesia. There Balinese ethnicity, and then Sunda in Javanese. It's really interesting how the spirit and how Sukarno with the Indonesian ideology of Pancasila make us have imagined this is the nationality. that can make us one as Indonesian with the 5 ideology in religion, in the law for the country, and especially Bali. We are joining the Indonesian country in 1950. Before we are fighting hard for colonialism to join the Indonesian. Art also do important role to to bring us a fire to fight colonialism, such as the painting of Sujoyono. Then Sujoyono that write a poster, Bung Ayo Bung, means let's go fight. And then it's the art of Sujoyono also become inspiration for the other artists, especially in Bali. Not only the Balinese artists that under colonial Bali sharing, they are painting about the beauty, about the Moe Indie, but there are also artists who actively painting about the war between a colonial to give some spirit for freedom, for to be part of the nation. I think that's what I want to add about this book.
So the influence of Benedict Anderson, his understanding of nationalism, and how it actually is almost impossible to apply in such a vast countries with so many different perspectives. And Haf, would you like to add anything of what you mentioned?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think when I was reading the book, I was sort of interested in like Benedict's like upbringing and his sort of like educational experience, and it taught me a lot about sort of understanding of sort of the British class system as well. I think he managed to get a scholarship to Eton, and then he went to Cambridge. I don't know, like the Oxbridge system. Like there's this sort of class structure, and I think he came from quite a privileged background, I assume. And then also, again, he moved to America and went to Cornell. And, there's this sort of, I was interested in sort of how that discourse was sort of built as well of Southeast Asia and why it was established during that time, the Vietnam War. And I don't know, it just gave me a sort of different perspective of not just Southeast Asia, but also the UK and the US and their relationship to, so that region, the region I come from. Yeah, no, so I just sort of want to add that. I found that quite interesting.
It's true. I think he perhaps also was the right person at the right time, wouldn't you say so, Vipash, as well? Of course, he had a vision or a sense or a sensibility that not so many people had, but I mean,
I have a feeling of like the landscape of like half, the work, but then it's like he's traveling, not, he's from the UK, and then he traveled to the US, and then end up in doing research in Indonesia, and then they banned him for his book. Then he ended up in Thailand. So in a way, it's like that kind of the landscape of the traveling is very interesting. But then at the same time, it's like we when it's end with Lyno, and then the Sala Samnak is like, oh, this is like a Sala that that he travels. So it's really life beyond boundaries. Yeah.
A final place to rest in a way. So do you have any thoughts to share with us on this?
I think for me, because I feel like because I went to school in the US, and then during my study, I'm sort of very distant to the field of Southeast Asia, and I've only starting to engage in the field because I'm as an artist only after I graduate. And during my time studying in the US, it was really difficult to find Southeast Asian artists, contemporary art written about it. And whenever I search, things that will come up will probably closest is like Southeast Asian Studies in International Studies Department. And for me, it was really interesting to find that he's actually the person that started this field in the US. You know, the department, the international study, where he was the chair. If you wanted to really study Southeast Asia, you know, you would go to his program, and he was sort of like the founding father of all of this. And so I think that point was really interesting to me. And also in thinking about, I guess, his notions of nationality, you know, I think it's sort of groundbreaking or sort of like refreshing to hear the way he approached the idea of nationality as something that's fictional, imaginative, you know, something that's imagined. So yeah, so it's sort of, for me, that was really surprising, because I feel like the idea of nationality is something that's so concrete. You know, if you don't think about it, it's just your citizenship, it's on your passport. But the idea of belonging, where you think you belong, is actually all in your head. And so it can be sort of like fictional, because sometimes history is fiction too, so depending on who writes it. So I think that was really interesting to me. Yeah, the idea of imagined community, and also tying back to the kind of project that I want to probably explore in the future is, you know, through these archaeological sort of site rebuilding, reimagining something that's in the past, and also unearthing something that's happened maybe now, but doing it in the future. So
which also challenges the notion of belonging, even into digging the past, and then addressing the past from a contemporary perspective. So yeah, and Lyno, maybe we'll conclude with you. You already sort of touched on Anderson's presence, but and it's in a very way, as Vipash said, a very poetic way to conclude the journey into the Sala Samnak. Has it been his book or his practice of reference to you?
Yeah, actually, I haven't read A Life Beyond the Boundary. I only know of, but I studied imagined communities. It's sort of like everyone has to study imagined communities, you know. But yes, you know, it's yeah, absolutely instrumental in really illuminating, you know, my understanding, you know, about, you know, what binds us together, this sense of belonging into identity that encapsulate, you know, a large mass of culture, politics, differences, communities, right? And I think it was really powerful. His study was really powerful and really, yeah, had me thinking a lot, because on the one hand, it helped us understand the complexity of of our contemporary body, inherited with so many things, you know, from the nation, from the nationality, from our knowledge, cultures, and so on, and to maybe to help me build an empathy, maybe to build a compassion, and to be cautious about such a framing, or this imaginary. On the one hand, it could be a productive solidarity approach, but on the other hand, it could be very dangerous, homogenic political, ideological tool as well. And so I think it's just this constant reminder of myself, you know. For example, in my project that I do, am I representing, or am I creating a narrative that includes, that, you know, create a singular understanding of certain things, or am I opening certain things? So I think maybe that's how I see this, and just want to raise one personal story. So for example, I was doing this exhibition in Manila, and actually it was part of Patrick Flores' project, Ties of History. Yeah, that Loredana, you also contribute to the publication as well, right? So there's artists from different countries be part of this, and because this is also funded by the ASEAN and Philippines, right? So it was really it was sort of like, yeah, channeled through these nation states representations of the artists that participated. So, you know, I complicit to all of these politics as well, be part of it as well. But what happened was at the opening event, so they will like call out all the artists, take photos and things. So and then I was there, and then there were staff from the Cambodian embassy in the Philippines that also came to the event. So they were looking for Cambodian artists, and they could not find me because I did not show any identifiable identity that could be, you know, no Khmer, I don't know, whatever shirt, you know, traditional shirt or any garment
like
that
Khmerness,
you know, symbolize the the Khmerness or the Cambodianness. So, but finally they found me. So, and then they said, why don't you wear something like this? You know, sort of like you represent Cambodia and so on. So, and I was like, oh my God. So this burden of you know representation is a constant negotiation that you deal with. And also for example, in this exhibition, by no means I represent Cambodia. Obviously, it just happened, right? And so, yeah, something that I want to raise. I think it is something that we artists, we complicit, but also I think it's something that we need to constantly negotiate.
I think we curators also are complicit. Vipash, you can also share your perspective as curators. We are complicit, and I've been thinking a lot for this exhibition, and Vipash, please share your thoughts also on your practice as curator, how to frame this question of nationality, but avoiding it altogether, I don't think doesn't help either. So what we need to do is perhaps raising it, to question it, or to dismantle it. But I think that's perhaps is more helpful than not acknowledging, because after all, we all hold some sort of passport. So we should perhaps engage in a conversation and find ways to connect one another beyond that passport. But it's a challenging task. Vipash, what do you think on this?
I guess my tax, because right now I mostly work with like government's projects, so my tax would be to complicate what they think about, you know, when they start doing nationality counting. I was like complicated somehow, yeah, but definitely it's like part of like who we are constructed to be in a way, yeah. So I agree with Nino. It's like, you know, you need to negotiate, but I think in terms of being curator, this is part that I think I need to make it more complicated, so they understand that it's not, you know, there's 10 countries in Southeast Asia, and then we should have them all, and this is not something like that.
Yeah, it's I completely agree with you. It's not, and it's much more complicated than that. At the same time, there are so many requirements that force us to just have a count. But I think the count per se is not a bad thing, so long that we complicate it and we challenge it in many ways. And in that, I'd like to come back to Anderson, and maybe I think it's time for us to conclude that his book is a memoir, like you pointed out, Vipash. It's a memoir not only of his experience working in Southeast Asia, but of his life spent across many borders. And the idea that a memoir transcend materiality, which is something that you wanted to discuss, so that we discussed today with you, Vipash. I think it's a very interesting point. I would like to thank you very much, and I would like to thank all the artists today. And actually, since today is our last online event, I would very much like to thank all the speakers that we've had so far, all the artists that participated in the exhibition. I would like to thank very much also the team at JWD, with whom we worked together for this series of online talks, because it has been challenging for us. As I said, we've been learning also on the ground. We spent many hours, many days working on this, and I would like to thank for the insightful contribution, and in particular for those who've worked with me on this from JWD, Time Chut Vi Lai Vanit, Om Keo Kalayanapong. Excuse me for the accent, despite many years in Thailand, it's still very challenging, and Mary Lee. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. To our very supportive audience, I would like to thank you for being with us all throughout, and also attending the exhibition. There are still a few more days at the exhibition. We might have some closing events depending on the situation. But if you visit the gallery, you will also find the newly printed catalog, which is now available. So Vipash, any note from you, or we'll conclude and say thank you and stay well?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, and stay well.
Thank you all. Stay well. See you at JWD if possible, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Loredana.
Thank you.
Vipash.
Thank you, Loredana.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Vipash. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.